How's it going, everybody? In case you're wondering what I'm doing with this clipboard, I decided it'd be a good idea to describe myself on a piece of paper just in case someone needs to find me. But I've come to a bit of predicament. See, just describing myself as like my looks, I have reddish brown hair, glasses, somewhat tall, and that would be pretty generic. It'd be kind of difficult for them to find specifically me, so I need to think of something. Oh, I know. Alright. Spends too much money on plastic toys. Yeah, that's perfect. Today, I'm going to be showing you guys my cube collection and just talking about cube collecting in general near the end of the video. Now, I wouldn't really consider myself a huge cube collector. I really only have around like 40-ish cubes, but I'd say I'm a lot more of a cube collector than some people because there's a lot of my cubes that are non-WCA or more collector's items. See, a lot of people maybe have like 40 or 30 cubes, but they might just have a bunch of WCA cubes that they've changed mains and bought a bunch of them, but they don't have like two non-WCA puzzles. So I think that I'm sort of a collector in that way. But enough talk, let's just get right into the cubes. Starting off, I have two Rubik's brand 2x2s. Both of these were given to me as gifts by people, and I've not really used them that much, obviously. But I find it interesting how small the Rubik's brand 2x2s are compared to traditional 2x2s or 2x2 speed cubes, because they're much smaller. And that's interesting because with the 3x3s, they're usually bigger than the speed cubes, the Rubik's brands are. Anyways, these cubes are not very good. Next, my only speed cube 2x2, the MGC. I don't really care too much about 2x2, and so I only have one speed cube. That's going to be a common theme. If I don't really have very many of something, that probably means I don't really care too much about the event. But this one is pretty good. It's definitely a bit worn down now, but I guess I could use an upgrade. Next, for 3x3s, I have a Oolong version 2. This was my first ever speed cube. It's not too bad for a non-magnetic cube from 2014, although at the time I should have gotten something better, something newer. I just took whatever was on Amazon that had good reviews, which obviously is not a great idea. Next, I have my second speed cube, the GAN 356 Air. As you can see, this guy has been through a lot, and it's not in great shape. The turning is not doing very good. I think I took off this white side because I was planning to unsticker the whole cube and re-sticker it because of the stickers being like, well, that. But I never really followed through with that because I don't really use this because it's not very good. At least the way I have it set up, it's not very good. But again, I should have bought a better cube at this time. This was sort of when I had some weird prejudice against magnetic cubes. I thought they were bad, so I kept on getting non-magnetic cubes, but eventually that stopped, thankfully. So this is this is a GTS2M, more specifically a Cubicle Labs GTS2M. Now that is important because it's not like a regular factory magnetized GTS2M. It was actually just a GTS2 that Cubicle would magnetize back when Cubicle Labs was actually like a thing. And anyway, that's kind of important because the regular GTS2's magnets are kind of light, but this one, it has stronger magnets because the Cubicle installed them. That's pretty nice. I actually got this cube back when Cubicle was doing their random premium puzzle $20, $30, $40 thing. Like, you just buy it and then you get a random one that was guaranteed to be valued more than whatever you paid for. And so I got this, which I believe it was around $45 back then. So that was a pretty good deal because I got the $20 one and I got this. And this was actually my first magnetic cube. I don't use it too much anymore. It has kind of snappy corner cutting, which is something I don't really like. But it's definitely underrated in the cubes in my collection. I don't use it as much as I probably would like to, but sometimes I just forget about it. This is a WRM. I've used it quite a lot. And I kind of use this as my school cube, I guess. because I don't really mind what happens to it, and it's not like, it doesn't have a ton of lube in it or anything, so it's not like it's going to get messed up at all. But yeah, it's pretty good. A little on the dry side right now. I don't use it too much. And I've sort of switched back and forth between having extra magnets and not having extra magnets. I don't have extra magnets in it right now, but I sometimes did. And I would usually like switch whenever I wanted it to not have extra magnets, I would take them out. So yeah, this is a Volk 3M. I believe it actually used to be Angstrom, but the lube has mostly worn off now. Obviously, the Volk 3M is amazing cube, very revolutionary, really, really good. I would say this is probably like my backup main, and I have basically two mains, which you're going to see in just a bit, but this one is probably like my backup for those mains, and I also like using it for OH. No, people like fast and small cubes for OH, but I actually like this one, which is a Philip 56mm and on the slower side, which is kind of weird, but that's just me. And finally, what are basically my two main cubes, the RS3M 2020 Angstrom version and the Diane Guhong version 4. Now, I basically just switched between these puzzles because they're both really great, and I have a review on the Guhong version 4, which you should totally check out. Anyway, yeah, these cubes are very good. Probably just my two mains that I switch between whichever one I feel like using. Next, for 4x4s, I have two Aosu GTS2s. This one is non-magnetic and stickered. This one is magnetic and stickerless. This was the one I had first back in the era of I don't like magnetic cubes phase. It's actually pretty good because I put a lot of work into it to get it to be good. It's quite fast and like smooth, but obviously it's non-magnetic and it suffers for that reason. But still pretty decent. Then this one is obviously better, but not my main because I like a different cube, which you're about to see in like 5 seconds. I like it more than that. And the cube I'm talking about, of course, is the MGC 4x4. I just like this one better. I like the turning on it. It's a little bit faster and smoother. The other one feels kind of just eh. But this is my main 4x4 that I use, and it's quite nice. Here we have a Yushin Little Magic Magnetic 5x5. Now this one is pretty decent for its price. It's quite fast. The magnets are pretty much non-existent or very, very light, especially on the outer layers. And the corner cutting can be a bit lackluster, but overall, I'd say at the time it was definitely the best at its price, but not so much anymore with cubes like the MGC 5x5 and Qi EMS 5x5 and Yuchuang and all those. And my main is the MGC 5x5. This one, I have it on a bit of a slower setup, but it's still pretty fast, and the magnets are much stronger, and the corner cutting is quite good. I'd say this cube is very good for Yao solvers, like me, but for reduction solvers, something more like a Volk might be better. And I might get a Volk or an Aochuang WRM sometime soon, but right now, I'm fine with the MGC 5x5. Here we have a Shadow M 6x6, my first 6x6. It's alright, but it's not amazing. But I definitely used it for a while before I got the next cube. And that cube, of course, is the MGC 6x6, my current main 6x6. I got this back when I was really getting into big cubes, which I'm not really so much anymore. I'm not really practicing really anything anymore, but it's very good. Definitely better than the original Shadow. I might get the Shadow V2. I don't know. I haven't heard like the amazing reviews about it. Just basically it's as good as the MGC. But the MGC is amazing, especially for its price, and it's much faster than the Shadow. And if you only have like a Shadow or even like something else, you'll probably get much better times on this cube. And finally, the Haze 7 7x7, my only 7x7. And this one, it's not in the best shape. It has some missing center caps, as you can see. And overall, it was very amazing, influential, broke a bunch of records when it came out. But nowadays, there's better 7x7s such as the Spark and the MGC, the latter of which I'm probably going to get soon. You might want to stay tuned for a review on it if I do get it, because I will probably be making that. Overall, it's pretty good, but there's definitely better ones out there that I just don't have. Here we have a Moyu Magnetic Pyraminx, my first Pyraminx. Now, this one, funny story, the core snapped a while back, and when I tried to put it back together, it would just explode whenever I started turning. So I had to come up with a solution for that. So I thought of something pretty smart. So basically, the Moyu Magnetic Skewb and the Moyu Magnetic Pyraminx have the same core, but the Skewb, the way the mechanism worked, it didn't really matter if the core was a little bit broken, because it would still work. So I swapped the good Skewb core for the bad Pyraminx core, and now both of them work fine. Although this one, the magnets have kind of fallen out, and it's not the best anymore. But still pretty good. It was definitely good back when I was using it. And here we have what probably is one of the most used puzzles in all of my collection, the Yushun Huanglong Magnetic Pyraminx. It's very underrated in terms of Pyraminxes. I've done probably thousands of solves on this from back when I actually was like very into Pyraminx and trying to get state record. I used this to get Arizona state record that still stands because there's no comps. It has this Cubicle 8 Years logo that I got with some sort of package, I think. That's pretty nice. And yeah, it's very good. I might get a different one, but this one is very good in terms of Pyraminxes, and not enough people talk about it. And I do have one more Pyraminx that I'm saving till the end because it's kind of special. So you'll have to stay tuned for that one. Here we have a Galaxy V2M Megaminx, my first Megaminx. It's pretty good, and the turning is nice, although it's a bit slow, and it is a little bit on the small side in terms of size. That's probably more because I'm used to the Yuhu V2M, which has also kind of outclassed it. And here we have the Yuhu V2M Megaminx, my current main Megaminx. This cube is honestly great, especially for the price, and it's definitely going to be my main Megaminx for a while. And just like Pyraminx, I have one that's kind of special that I'm saving for the end. Now we have the Yushun Little Magic Square 1. Still pretty decent, although lacking in corner cutting and is a little too fast with not very strong magnets. But still definitely a great cube. Was definitely a main killer when it came onto the market, especially for only $10. But now there's some better cubes out there. One of those better cubes is the Volt version 2M Square 1. This one is definitely better than the YLM in my opinion. It's more controllable speed, has better corner cutting, and has stronger magnets, which is nice. And I've heard the MGC Square 1 is supposed to be really good, which probably is considering the MGC's typical quality and consistency. But right now, this is basically the best Square 1. There's not really too much of a debate. And as is the current trend, it seems I'm going to be saving a special Square 1 for the end of the video. Here we have my only Skewb, the Moyu Magnetic Skewb. This was the one I did the whole core switcheroo on. It's decent, but I think there's better ones out there now because this one is quite old. But there's not very many Skewbs on the market, and I don't really care too much about Skewbs, so that's why I only have one. Here we have the Shengxiao Magnetic Clock, a cube that is destined to be forgotten. It's not terrible, but it's not great. I've set mine up to be definitely better than most people's, I would say, but it's still not great, especially compared to the Qi clock. I can still get some decent times on it, though. And here we have my current main, the Qi clock. I am not very fast at clock, but I can tell that this one is really good. It's very fast, but it still is tactile with these tiny magnets that align the gears. And the pins took actually a little bit of getting used to compared to the Shengxiao. They are definitely weaker in terms of magnet strength, and I can do this and they fall. But that doesn't really pose as an issue in solves, especially once you get used to it. Those are all my WCA event cubes, except for the ones I'm saving until later. Starting off our non-WCA cubes, I have this 10x10. which takes a long time to solve. I've actually been getting into speed solving 10x10 recently. I average about like 24-25 minutes. It's quite a bit of fun actually once you get used to it, although it's definitely not for everyone. If you're one of those people who absolutely hates like 6x6 and 7x7, 10x10 is just going to be even worse for you, but I really, really like it. It's quite a bit of fun, and it's a great way to kill some time. And by the way, this one is a Moyu Meilong 10x10, and it turns pretty good. It's obviously non-magnetic, pretty smooth, but the corner cutting obviously is not that much, and there can be some lockups and pops. Here we have a 2x2 mirror cube. This was probably one of my first shape mods or non-WCA cubes that I ever got, and it turns nicely and is pretty good. Here we have a Rubik's brand keychain cube. Looks to be an older Rubik's brand by the stickers and the older logo. Obviously, because it's older Rubik's, it's not very good, and because it's just a keychain cube, and most keychain cubes are not the best. But yeah, it's not very good. I believe this one was like a gift or something. Here we have a Rubik's brand Void cube. Now this one, yeah, it has like no corner cutting. The turning is actually not terrible when everything is perfectly aligned, but literally no corner cutting, and that just makes it like really frustrating to solve, but still an interesting solve in terms of just the Void cube itself. Here we have a Rubik's brand floppy cube, although I think it's called like a Rubik's Edge or something, but it's a floppy cube. A pretty interesting and pretty easy solve, and this one actually turns pretty decently actually for a Rubik's brand puzzle. Here we have probably one of the easiest cubes ever, the Pyraminx Duo. It's never more than 4 moves away from being solved, and it's extremely easy. Like, people who don't know how to solve cubes, I've had people who have solved this one. Yeah, it's really easy. The one I have is not too great. There's a lot of, like, ball bearings, and it's, like, super clicky and bumpy, but it's still pretty good. Here we have a Rubik's Orbit. This was one of the contestants on the most recent Shape Mod Showdown episode, so you might want to go check that out. And it's a pretty cool puzzle. It's a 2x2 shape mod. Yeah. Here we have the other contestant on that episode, which is the Moyu Fisher Skube. Skube shape mod. Pretty cool. Turns pretty well. Here we have a pretty interesting puzzle, the ReadyMinx. It's basically a Ready cube and a Megaminx combined together. It's a very interesting cube and very interesting solve. Turns pretty well, although because it's non-magnetic and just the nature of the turning, it's very easy to overshoot. Here we have probably the hardest puzzle to figure out in my collection, the Sudoku cube. Now, the thing with this one was I got it like on a trip or something in like a gift shop. And basically the point of this is you have to get all these numbers to be like different. So it's basically a 3x3, but you have to figure out the combination. Now what I should have done is taken a picture of it when I got it because it was in a solved combination. But I didn't, and I scrambled it up, and I literally had to spend like months trying to figure out what the solved combination was. But somehow I found it, and I made sure to write it all down so that I can solve it whenever I want to in case I scramble it. But that probably isn't going to happen too much because this is basically a dollar store cube. Here we have a keychain version of a Rubik's snake. Now, I really like this actually. It's quite fun to mess around with, make like patterns and stuff. Although it's not really like a Rubik's cube, but it is made by Rubik's brand. And I like the keychain size a lot more than like the regular size. I've seen the regular ones, they look a bit too big. This one I can sort of just mess around with in my hands, and it's not like too big to hold or whatever. And this last one, it's up to you if this counts as a cube or not, but it's an infinity cube. I like messing around with it. It's just satisfying. And now here we have the 3 cubes that I saved until later because they're either kind of rare or special or have interesting stories behind them. Let's start with this one. This is an original Meffert's Pyraminx. Now, my grandparents found this in like their basement, and they basically just gave it to me when we visited them, and I was like, sure, cool. This is probably one of my first ever ones that I think is like a collector's item. So that's pretty cool. It doesn't turn very well, but I did put actually Lubical 1 in it, and it made it turn a lot better than it was turning. So it's definitely cool to have a cube like this in the collection, the original Mefferts Pyraminx. Next, we have a square one that is not actually put together, as you can see, because I basically broke it. You may have recognized this guy from one of my first ever videos, if you're a long-time viewer. It was like cubes that are important or influential, and I was talking about the Chi square one, and I don't have a Chi square one, so I wanted to show the whole thing of the Chi square one stripping and exploding, having that problem. So I basically took this cube apart and like threw it on the ground, but that was a mistake because I wasn't able to put it back together because I couldn't find the one piece that like holds the screw in place. So that kind of was a mistake. Anyway, this is the Guojia square one. It's very old, and I actually used to have two of these. Well, we got them as gifts. I got a black stickered one, and my sister got a white stickered one, this one. And what's interesting about this is most square ones have white and yellow on the bottom and top. This one has green and blue, which is very interesting. So that is definitely a cool puzzle to have in the collection, even if it doesn't really work correctly. And I actually threw out the black one because it had like missing stickers and stuff. I shouldn't have thrown it out, but I did because I was just doing that. And finally, we have the Hungarian Supernova Megaminx, the first ever Megaminx before the term Megaminx was even used. Now, this one I was given to by my aunt, uncle, and aunt, and I'm pretty sure they just had it lying around similar to this. But this is more interesting because this one wasn't like super widely available, so I don't know where they got it, but they got it and they gave it to me. But I think they had it for a long time before they actually gave it to me. But anyways, this one is actually supposed to be decently rare. I remember going on like a Twisty Puzzles website and seeing that it had been sold for like $100. Now, I'm not 100% certain that this is a Hungarian Supernova Megaminx, but it has the piece design and look of a Hungarian Supernova Megaminx. So yeah, those are the three puzzles that I think have some pretty cool and interesting backstories in terms of my collection. So that was my cube collection. Now I want to talk a little bit about cube collecting in general. So cube collecting is probably one of the lesser sub-hobbies in cubing. Usually there's like solving, doing YouTube, streaming, those types of things. I think collecting is not as many people do it because obviously it costs money if you want to get a decent amount of cubes. My personal opinion is that collecting cubes is actually a great sub-hobby of cubing for older cubers because cubers that are older might not be as into the solving aspect because they may not be able to get as fast as younger cubers, and because they might have more money to spend than, say, like a little kid on cubes. And also, it's also because I think like being into the history of cube releases is also sort of hand in hand with cube collecting, and that is something that older cubers might like to do because sometimes older cubers are the people who have been cubing for a long time, because that just makes sense. Overall, while I'm not much of a huge cube collector myself, I do think it is a good hobby and it's a good alternative to, you know, solving or doing YouTube for older cubers. You know how I was writing a description of myself and I said I spend too much money on plastic toys? Well, I think that might also be a little bit too generic because, you know, it could be any toy. So, let me see here. What could I write down? Oh, I know. I can write down, spend too much money on plastic toys and talks about them for 20 minutes straight. Yeah, that's pretty accurate.